Welcome back to the X Podcast. Sitting here with Tim Moore. I brought back my old intro.
You did. That was the throwback.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. You are listening to Russ Moore, sitting here across from Tim Moore, and we're sending our vibes out to you wherever you're tuning in from, and we're so glad that you're with us.
Such pretty radio
I know.
voice.
I tried to go into like a late night radio voice.
That's what it sounds like.
You know, I don't know, but how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah?
I'm doing well. Yep. You're sporting the new hoodie.
I like
It
this
is
one.
raining outside.
That's why I wore it. It's like it's
'cause
raining. It's
you
been
knew it
so
was gonna
warm
rain.
lately. We're about done with winter clothing.
I hope
saw
so.
it was going to be like upper 60s and rain. I'm like, yeah, I'm wearing
Tomorrow
the
it's supposed to be 70s and sunny. We're going to see a baseball game.
hoodie. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Can't wait. It's
gonna be
Taking
so
the staff.
fun.
We're going to go have fun.
It's going to be great. So we keep saying that we're going to do maybe one or two episodes on this mental health series. But we really have continued just to – it seems like we've struck a nerve with some of our listeners.
Yeah.
Whether they're here on Sundays or not, in this conversation that we're having around all things mental health. And one of the podcasts I'd mentioned 2 episodes back with Simon Sinek, he made an interesting observation. Mm-hmm. And again, he's not a clinical psychologist, not a doctor. So, you know, if you're listening and you're a counselor, I'm not saying this is the certified Bible truth. This is just his opinion. Mm-hmm. But he said he thought that the term mental health should be replaced by mental fitness. He said he's not a big fan of the term mental health. And
Did you say why?
Yeah, he did, and I don't remember. but he just said he said he felt like I think he said because he feels like mental health is like health is such in flux, and he felt like it was an incomplete way to approach it. And he said for him, and I think he felt like mental health puts it a little bit more on defense. Whereas mental fitness is more, okay, here are the things I'm doing to build the muscles of my emotional, mental stamina and wholeness. And so you have to go back.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Because I think mental health, one of the things that we've talked about just even in this series is it is such a broad and wide kind of ranging topic that I think it's kind of challenging to tackle because it does. Like we were talking about even before at the beginning of the series, you know, is there a difference? Remember? We were talking about
we had a little bit of a debate.
Is there a difference between mental illness and just mental struggle or mental health? No, you can't say mental health because mental health is neither positive nor negative. It's just a thing. So it's either mental health struggle or mental illness, right?
No, mental health or mental illness.
No.
Well,
there's a difference between mental health struggle or mental illness. Mental health would be like, that's like not saying that, or physical. It's like, that's not like saying you either are good health or bad health. You're just saying, I'm health. Yeah, I just have health.
Well, no, my point
Well, we know you have health.
My point is the context was that in week 1, it caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Because instead of saying, hey, we're going to have conversations around mental health, several times you made the comment, you said, you know, we're going to have a conversation around mental illness because it's something that affects us all. We all have struggled with mental illness.
Yes.
And it kind of caught me off guard because I thought in my own mind, and I thought, okay, maybe this is just semantics, but in my own mind, I differentiate illness and health, mental illness and mental health. To me, mental health is the spectrum we're all on, from poor to great. But mental illness is where you actually cross the line into something where you have something, I don't know if you say diagnosed, but you actually have something specific, a disorder, so to speak, that is affecting you. And so in my mind, you could have poor mental health due to habits or due to whatever without having a mental illness. And so that was kind of the debate we got in, which you took to...
Yeah, I mentioned to a counselor, and he basically kind of said, you're both right. He said, he basically said that he said mental health struggle, if you're struggling in your mental health, he said I think the difference is there a difference between, and this is probably where we were debating a little bit, is there a difference between mental illness as a disorder versus a diagnosed disorder versus mental illness that people can experience that affects their everyday life.
Sure.
that isn't necessarily diagnosed or someone doesn't see a doctor for.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what he said. He said, well, it becomes mental health
Yeah.
struggle does become mental illness the moment it affects your daily function. Now, you can have that, and I would argue, and that's where we probably differed on it, but
Right.
I think we were saying the same thing, but from different perspectives.
Sure.
This is semantics, probably the same thing with Simon Sinek. Is that I think you can struggle with your mental illness and have mental illness, just like you can have physical illness without having a physical disorder.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't have to
Okay.
have some kind of diagnosed disorder to have a physical illness that
Right.
may only last short term. It may be acute.
Yeah.
It might be acute mental illness, but it's still mental illness because it affects your everyday function. So that
Yeah.
was kind of my perspective.
Yeah.
And part of why I really wanted to do that was to intentionally on week 1 was to destigmatize it.
Destigmatize, yep.
And I think just to go to your point, I think a lot of times, and I wanted to kind of, I think, induce a little bit of that shock and then like, wait a minute, is this? Because I think in our minds, we picture mental illness as, well, somebody that is so severe
Yeah.
on that spectrum that they're either on medication, in facilities,
Right.
inpatient somewhere. It's like, that's the extreme thing that is kind of popularized by culture.
Yeah.
But I think that there is lesser form of mental illness that we can move in and out of
Yeah.
in our mental health. And so it's a little semantics. I mean,
Right.
where it's,
Yeah.
so is fitness.
So I mean, at the end of the day, you came back and said you talked to Luke, and he said I was right.
That's
that
totally what he said.
So, no,
He said, technically, you want to know what he said? He
What?
said, technically, you're not wrong.
he said technically.
That's what he said. He didn't say
You
you're
know
right.
what?
He did. He said, technically.
Dr. Luke, I'll take it.
He said,
I'll take
technically,
it.
you're not wrong.
Well,
But he also said, what you're using and how you're using it, I think is absolutely appropriate.
Well, it's fun to think through these things.
Yeah.
But I really, kind of going back to Simon Sinek's thought on mental health versus mental fitness. I love, and I think they're both right. I don't think there's either one is right or wrong. But I love the phrasing and the construct that mental fitness gives, because I think that gives a really great picture on which you can begin to address practically. Okay, how can I build my mental fitness? And so I thought some of this will be overlap because we've had conversations before, even going back into winter. Okay, how can I up my mental health? So we've had conversations sort of like this before, but I just thought it'd be helpful, since these last few weeks have been such great conversations, to maybe dive a little deeper into what are practical ways, knowing, like you said, there's a broad spectrum. Everybody that's listening to this podcast, it could be somebody with literal clinical depression, all the way to somebody that's like, hey, like, I'm just kind of struggling, all the way to somebody that's like, you know what, like, I'm doing okay right now, or I'm doing well, but I always know I can take my mental fitness to another level.
Yeah.
And so if we take that construct, if we take that phrasing, mental fitness, and we pretend right now we're in a gym, what are some exercises we can do? What are some practical ways, wherever somebody's at on the spectrum, whether it's deep depression or just everyday life, that we can build our mental fitness?
Mental
With
fitness.
you, do you have ways?
Timetables. I like to go, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 2 is 2, 1 times...
When
We're building mental fitness?
mental fitness?
Yeah. Was that not? Okay, so we're not doing our multiplication timetables.
No, I don't know what that means.
Oh. Did I
What
say
do you
that wrong?
mean?
Where you learn multiplication. I'm talking about working out your mind. So
Ah,
you get it
I
now?
see what you
Okay.
did there.
You see what I did there?
I see what you
Okay.
did there, and
All
I
right.
was very slow catching.
You
it.
were very slow. You need to work on your mental fitness.
I need some exercises for my mental fitness.
What can you do? I do like
I would have thought mental intelligence. Okay, I see what you're doing.
That's mental intelligence.
Maybe,
Never wrong.
Let me say it this way: maybe emotional fitness,
No,
mental emotional fitness.
Yes, I like that. I do like the positive, or putting it on offense, because I think most of us probably, when it comes to our mental health, we probably just all operate as what we would status quo until something affects us,
Yeah.
and then we would say my mental health is poor.
Yeah.
But rarely would we ever go, man, my mental health is, it's in shape right now. You know what I mean? We wouldn't think of it in terms of fitness.
How are you doing in life? Mentally
But-
amazing.
Oh my goodness, I'm so in shape. I got muscles bulging out of my brain everywhere. Most people wouldn't say that.
Emotions are soaring.
Emotions are just so strong right now. But I think we recognize there's some parallels to the physical, right? Physical fitness, I think we both know this because we both like to work out. We both like to talk about fitness and just our own personal lives. We do. But what do we know about physical health? Even when it comes to our physical fitness, physical health, there are 1 week I can be like, man, I've been eating so well. I've hit the gym consistently. I'm getting good sleep. Man, my physical fitness I lost 4 pounds. You know what I mean? That the next week we can be like, oh, it's bad. I haven't. So I guess my point is that I like thinking of it in terms of it's something you need to constantly work on. I think that's something we don't think about when it comes to our emotional or mental side. We think about it physically. But I don't know that we always think about emotionally or physically.
I also think you just gave the first step.
What was that?
Inside what you just said.
Going to a gym?
You talked about how 1 week you are on the scale measuring, and the next week you're not measuring, or it's up and down.
Sure.
And I think in that is the first step, which is, one of my old mentors said, you can't manage what you don't measure.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that you actually grow in physical fitness is you have mile markers, and you have, whether it's testing or whether it's, the scale, or whether it's your app where you're recording calories, or whether it's, in the gym, you're logging the weights.
Macros. Maybe we need macros for our mind.
So how there's got to be, is there a systemic or a strategic way that you're consistently actually measuring your soul? What are the markers?
That's a great question
to
actually.
measure.
That's a really good question.
How would you do it? I mean, I think there's a lot of ways.
I don't know. I'm literally processing because
I'll spit out a couple that just pop to the
these are not
front
things
burners.
you do. These are the way you measure.
This is the way you measure.
Yeah.
I think one measurement or one key to measurement, just awareness, which I think can take the form of, do you have a time each week where you get quiet and just assess how you're doing? Do you have a time, for me, a big part of that is my soul day, my Sabbath Saturdays, where, I'm getting alone, I'm assessing what's really going on, how am I feeling, what's going on. Another thing I think is to look for markers that your emotions are usually going to come out one way or the other, or there's going to be secondary emotions. Like jealousy is a secondary emotion. It's a secondary emotion coming from insecurity. And I think the more that you begin, like, one of the things, this makes me feel like a very healthy person emotionally, but also a very unhealthy person emotionally at the same time, is I've become very aware almost regularly. Ooh, why am I feeling that?
Yep.
That's a marker that something's off. Ooh, why am I comparing?
You know what I think that is?
Let me give you go ahead.
I just think that's emotional maturity.
Well,
Because
so.
I've noticed that in my life in the last few years. But I think prior to probably 5 years ago, I don't think I ever did.
And it's so powerful.
And I didn't ask the question. I just never asked the question.
Yeah.
I think, but honestly, and I've said this over and over, but I think that was part of a process of going through an extended period of counseling. That when you have someone asking you questions about all those things and you have to think through how you're going to answer and process, that's when I started to pick up on the importance of asking myself, why do I do that?
Yeah.
Why do I always kind of get tired and then lash out and do that? Or, I heard one person say recently, whatever triggers you should trigger you to look and see what caused it. Like anything that kind of sets you off and triggers you is usually an indication that there's something unhealthy from your past. Yeah. Your soul, your whatever that needs to be addressed.
Yeah. It's good.
And so I like that.
It's good. And I think you just gave another step of inviting somebody in that's a regular part of it. I mean, we have coaches with all other areas of our life. Why not have coaches in the areas of our souls? Most important thing in our life. I
kind of feel like that's what pastors are.
Pastors in a way, yes, but like
counselors,
you have your counselors. Like I don't know if I told you, but I've someone that or that I've told you about. But I've in the last few months, because I always tell other people to do this, but I haven't done it in a while. But about 4 or 5 months ago, someone out of state that knows me really well, I just said, hey, every 6 weeks I want to have a soul check-in, and we put it on the calendar. His assistant literally come, and we literally put it on an Outlook calendar. Yeah. And it's set on the calendar every 6 weeks, and he knows all my escapes. Yeah. He knows, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we process. And then each time he'll give me homework. Hey, I want you to think through and ask these questions in prayer over the next few weeks to God. and ask God to speak to you about this area, and ask God to speak to you about this why, and process this. And these are questions I want you to consider. And so I have like every 6 weeks this standing soul check-in.
So good.
And it just gets me processing, and like I had one last week, and it was just so like I can't even explain what it did for me. But then, kind of going back to even just the practical of training yourself and your emotions to be honest about your emotions, but then also to ask the deeper questions. So, I mean, I've been on, just to wrap myself out, I've been on walks lately where I've done an entire lap around a park, and I'm having a conversation with someone in my mind that I am so frustrated about. So,
creating a narrative that doesn't exist. Boy, I do that all the time. It's so bad.
And so what I'm trying to do when I catch myself in that is, number one, catch myself in it.
Yeah.
Number two, do two things. Be honest with God. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, God, this is how I feel. I'm not going to try to hide it. I'm not going to try to minimize it. I want to give this to you. I'm going to ask you to soften my heart here. I'm going to ask you to speak, But then the other thing is ask myself, what is behind that? If there's that level of frustration in my heart, where's that coming from? If I'm beginning to compare myself with people more, where is that coming from? If I'm beginning to go down darker paths in my mind and my thoughts, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
If joy and peace are lacking in my life, okay, where is that coming from? And I think I heard someone say recently, which this is convicting because I continually put off physical blood work and I need to finally do it. But I heard somebody say recently, like, you need to eventually, from time to time, do blood work on your soul to see what's missing. Because, when you do blood work, it's like, okay, this, vitamin D, you're low in vitamin D or you're low in this. But, we don't often do blood work on our soul to be like, okay, strength, courage, whatever it may be. Like, and so I think you hit it, assessing, measuring.
That's
how
important.
are you,
Yeah. No, I think it's something that's really hard to do when it comes to your mental health. But I think being aware of I think another thing that we can look for as indicators, we're talking about some indicators, I guess. I don't know how much that leans into fitness, but I think if you find yourself, I think if your fuse gets short,
Yep.
I think that's a pretty big indicator. If you find yourself kind of just cranky, more often than not, you find yourself kind of losing your temper pretty quickly. You find yourself creating narratives and playing in, dramas and stories inside your head about people and situations. It's probably an indication that there's something there that you need to think about and address. And so,
Yeah.
I think that's great. So we've definitely said assessing. I think there's some things that you could do to probably improve.
Yeah.
Right? This is also things that you can do to improve your mental health. You already said, and I think that's a great one, making sure that you have a soul day, making sure you have space. I think capacity, margin.
Yes.
Margin.
Yes.
Do we give ourselves margin for our soul? Do we give margin for our mind and our thoughts? I think those are all real important. I think rest. I'm terrible at it.
Me too.
I'm really bad at it. But I can feel it's not just, I think physically I can feel at times, also mentally and emotionally, I can start to feel when I'm getting depleted.
Yep.
And that is often what leads to making really bad decisions.
Yep.
Is when you get depleted.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think the question is, we know physically, because I think we've heard most of our life, even if we don't follow the advice most of the time.
Have you heard of the HALT thing?
What is it?
HALT.
HALT?
Yeah.
No, say it.
HALT is an acronym. They use it in spiritual circles, psychological circles, AA.
I think I have heard this.
Hungry. I think the A is either angry or anxious. And then the L is lonely, and the T is tired.
Yeah.
You make your worst decisions in the HALT moments.
I think it's angry.
The HALT seasons.
I've heard that one.
If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, HALT. Don't move.
Don't
make a decision.
Don't make
an action.
That's a big thing, and I think then you have to kind of figure out, how am I going to address how I'm feeling. But I think we know all the right answers physically. I should be getting a certain number of hours of rest every night. I should be eating better because it can affect you. It can affect your mental health. I should be, we know all this. I should exercise. I should move around. I shouldn't be lethargic. We know all of that stuff. So let's ask, what does that look like for our mental health?
Well, I think you also just gave the second
Oh,
step.
geez. I don't keep giving these steps. I don't even know I'm giving them. Come on.
You gave the second step, which is before we use all the physical actions as an analogy for our mental fitness, let's make sure we're also doing the physical actions for our mental fitness.
Wait, I did say it does affect your mental health.
Because
and
it absolutely does. I mean, the studies are just numerous. They're unlimited on what exercise does for depression, on how nutrition impacts your mental and emotional health. It's funny. I'm speaking here in a few weeks. I thought about, just as a funny aside, bringing up people make fun of me. We got one of the podcast emails in a few weeks ago of Pastor Russ, why do you carry a gallon jug of water around? And it's funny because when Tommy and Paige called my friends that go to our faith community but are also part of my gym community, they would carry around these gallon jugs, and I always swore I'm never going to be that person.
That's what meatheads do in the gym.
I know.
Carry around their jug of
water. Jug of water.
Always walk around like this. You do that, don't you?
I hope you're watching on YouTube. So
you're that guy who walks around the gym with your,
Okay, well, so anyways, I swore I will never be that person. And then I realized, wait, I don't realize how little water I'm getting, no matter how many bottles I drink.
So bad.
If I'm not doing a gallon of water. Like it is just the simplest, easiest way to make sure you're actually getting a gallon in. And there have been so many studies I've seen where moodiness and anxiety and fogginess is a direct correlation of not drinking enough water. So water not only is one of the most important things for your health and for weight loss and for muscle gain and for your organs. I wrote this down. I don't know if I'll use this in the message, but sometimes I may think I'm depressed when actually I'm dehydrated. And I just don't. I think we underestimate.
You just wasted it too.
You just wasted it.
I may still use it.
I don't know.
You wasted it.
But I think like we just underestimate how much water intake. And in fact, it's funny. What was it?
I'm gonna drink some water. You're talking about it. I'm so bad at drinking
you
water.
Are. You know,
I can go like all day. It'll be lunchtime or later, and I realize I haven't drank anything today.
That's how you only use the restroom once a week.
That's
so anyways, but it's true. But
that's why you go twice every half hour.
Usually more than that.
You make it through a podcast. To be
honestly, I am too.
You hold it most of the time.
But what was it in 2020? I'll never forget one of the podcasts, Carey Nieuwhof, one of the just most listened to leadership podcasts in the world, had all these leaders that he said. Do you remember this?
No.
He had all these leaders. Why are you smiling?
I'm just thinking about something. Go ahead.
Okay. He had all these leaders that he said called him in the course of a week and said, "Will you talk to me and counsel me and pray for me? My mental health is struggling so deep." And he said, "Look," he said, "I didn't want to minimize what they're going through. It's 2020.
Yeah.
The conversation around mental health is just going to expedite over the next few years." He said, but he surprised them. All these leaders, world-renowned leaders, strong leaders. He said, "Yes, I will talk to you about what's going on in your life, and I will counsel you and I'll pray for you. But first, for the next 2 weeks, I want to know, are you drinking enough water and getting enough sleep?"
Wait, who said this to them?
Carey Nieuwhof.
The people asked him to do it, and he told everybody.
And this is his response.
Okay, let me hear.
He said, when they said, "Give me some coaching, give me some mental health, give me some," or whatever, he said his first two questions were, how much water are you drinking, and how much sleep are you getting? And he said, over the next 2 weeks, I want you to make sure you get enough water, get enough sleep, and then call me back, and we'll talk about your other issues. He said, I'm trying to remember the percentage. I think it was 90 or 95% of them called back and said, that actually fixed it. Which I'm like, okay. It just goes to show that, again, I know people are on a spectrum, and there's people, you're just chugging the water.
My goal, if you're watching, is to drink this whole entire bottle while we're doing our podcast.
I believe you.
Yours is most gone.
Yeah, it is.
But my goal is...
And I've already drank half a gallon today.
You got to pee right now, don't you?
No.
My goal is to finish this bottle so that you have something to pee into later.
And by the way, like...
That's inappropriate, wasn't it? Sorry.
No, you're good. But by the way, kind of... on the inverse of this, I think another conversation around mental health is not just what you put in, but what you take out. And that could go for a lot of things. We could talk about certain relationships that would improve your mental health.
Sure.
But on the subject of nutrition, even if you're the person that's like, look, I'm not ready to eat vegetables yet, can I just tell you, if you literally just remove sugar and alcohol for a month.
Yeah.
And curb, not take away completely, let's not be crazy, but curb your caffeine intake. I promise you, your anxiety will dramatically decrease. Take away sugar, take away alcohol for a month, and then curb your caffeine. Do a cup in the morning. I'll do a light, mid-stimulant pre-workout before the gym. That's about it. And I just noticed the more caffeine that I intake, the more it affects. We know by studies your focus and your anxiety.
Man, these are good. So you could start with the physical to affect the mental, because
your physical. Here's a physical challenge for our listeners:
drink
gallon of water a day over the next month.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but
what is it? 16 ounces?
That's not 16
12?
ounces. That's
12.
That's 8 to 12, isn't it?
No, I think they're 12. At least 12.
Okay.
So how many ounces are in a gallon? 64.
Look, don't put me on a metric
64?
system math equation.
No,
okay?
isn't it 64 ounces in a gallon? I'm pretty sure it is.
I think.
So 12 into 64, right?
Yeah.
5 plus of these a day. 5 bottles of water a day.
Look, do your
That's
math
a lot.
on your own time if you're listening. But
Sorry.
here's your challenge for the next
5 times
month.
12 is 60, yeah.
Gallon of water a day, no sugar or alcohol. Curb.
No sugar.
No sugar or alcohol. Let me say, so okay, look,
What about the sugar alcohols?
there's trace amounts of sugar. I'm saying no added sugar. So no sweets, no white breads, no.
We just had Little Debbie's this weekend.
I know. I'm saying, let's say this: if you're struggling with your mental health,
Yeah.
just try this for a month.
It might help your physical
Gallon
health,
of
too.
water, no sugar. Yes,
bet
no
it
sugar,
will.
alcohol. Curb your caffeine.
Wow. And hit the weights.
Yes.
Listen, I was
Find some
talking.
exercise
So
you
listen,
enjoy.
I was talking to a clinical psychologist probably about 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. He called me. It's actually a guy that we're bringing out here soon, and he called me while I was at the gym, and I said, and he was like, "What are you doing?" I'm working out. It was 7:30 in the morning, something like that.
You're so braggy.
He what? He called me, or it was 7:30 in the morning. Well, it was real early where he was because he's in California. Dang. And so he called me, and he said, "What are you doing?" And we were going to talk, and I said, "Working out." And he said, "Well, can we talk while you?" I said, "Yeah, go for it." So I'm working out while you're doing it. And he says, "I want to commend you for what you're doing." He said, "What you're doing right now is one of the single most important things for your mental health and your longevity."
That's good.
He said, and this is maybe not loosely connected to your mental health, but he did say that as you age, one of the most important things that you can do, so again, we're going back to physical, is working out. He said one of the things that causes people to decline physically, and I would say your physical and mental health are connected. Like we say, your mind, body, and spirit, they're all connected.
Yeah.
You're struggling. I mean, I promise you're struggling with a chronic physical pain. It's going to affect your mental health.
Yeah.
I promise you. It
Yeah.
always does. So they're connected. And he said that what you're doing right now, he said most people when they reach a certain age, 60s, 70s, he said one of the things that often causes them to go downhill real fast is you lose muscle. Once you cross a certain age, you start losing muscle on a regular basis. They don't have the muscle for the balance that is needed. That's why you often hear of elderly people when they fall.
Oh, wow.
And they you just hear, "Oh, I had a fall and broke something." Well, it's because he said they don't have the muscle. They haven't actually built up. They've lost too much muscle
That's
as they've
good.
aged. That results in them end up falling.
That's good.
And
Write that down.
you know what happens. I mean, I remember this with like my wife's grandmother who had Alzheimer's, and it was like, what happens is a lot of times people when they're elderly, the moment they fall,
Yeah.
they decline.
Yep.
The moment
Yep.
they can't walk, the moment they have to go into a facility, their whole entire
Yep.
literally their lives decline.
Yep.
And so I just think point is it's
That's
not
good.
necessary, but I think it is we are far more interconnected of beings
Yeah.
than we realize.
Yeah.
And so I think that the main point that we're even just saying when we talk about our mental health, how do our mental fitness start with physical fitness?
Yeah,
Take it
that's good.
seriously.
That's good.
And you said everything from getting your blood work done to working out to water to drinking water, intake of water, cutting out sugar, cutting out alcohol as much as possible, maybe caffeine. All those things can actually have a direct impact on.
Yep.
Now, again, as we're talking about mental health, mental illness, I want to say that the things that we're talking about, I think, can improve your mental fitness. Aside from that, you can have some very serious clinical mental disorders,
absolutely.
and we're not saying that, well, if you just do those things, then you're, diagnosed. I mean, we know people that have been diagnosed with bipolar, diagnosed with schizophrenia, diagnosed with all that. I'm not saying that they're going to go away because you drank a bunch of water. So I want to just make sure that people understand that but we're talking about the level. It won't hurt. Yeah. It can help. Physical fitness can help you in other areas. But I think we're saying in general, when it comes to just overall mental fitness.
Yeah.
Is start with your physical fitness.
Yep. I got another one.
Let's go. Yeah, what's another one?
I was trying to think of how to word this. The phrase I'm going to use is engage in replenishing work.
Yeah. Replenishing work.
Replenishing work. And the reason I put that qualifier on there is, look, maybe your current career is not something that that fills you up.
Yeah.
It's still important to bring your best.
Right.
It's still important to bring meaning to it. You can still bring meaning to it, and doing that alone is going to increase your mood, increase your emotions, increase your quality of life. But I think I mentioned to you, what was it in Judah Smith's book, How's Your Soul? We talk about the 4 R's: rest, restriction, relationships, and responsibility. And responsibility in that is work. And there's a yin and yang of rest and work, and that they both, to be optimally healthy in your mind, there's got to be deep rest and deep work. And I've thought about this recently because I'm really lucky in that, number one, what I have for a career, I love.
Yeah.
And I love what I get to do. But I also can notice how full I get if I'm also engaging in a few different things that are my side hobbies, passions. And it's funny. I've mentioned I'm writing again and working on my next project. And I was on the phone the other day with my buddy Logan, and I mentioned, I was like, man, I have been in the zone again with writing. And you know what he said? It was really interesting. He said, Russ, I can always tell when you're writing again. And I said, really? He goes, yes. He said, your voice is full. Like, you're full. He said, I can tell when you're writing.
Wow.
And I've noticed it. And like the other Friday, like I almost lost track of time. I went to the park and just wrote for hours, and I was so full. It filled me up so much that it gave me physical energy for the run that I did later. And I felt, and I've just noticed, and here's what's unfortunate. A lot of times when we get in a low state mentally, we actually retreat from those things. We step back from the writer's block. We step back from the canvas and the paint. We step back from the studio. We step back from the project because we don't feel energy. When you feel low, or you feel anxious, or you feel depressed, you step back from that, when sometimes one of the things you need to do the most is re-engage in your passion. And so whatever that looks like, whether for some people listening to this, and it's funny because I was talking to somebody yesterday that was opening up about how they kind of feel like they're in a funk right now. And I knew that one of the things that they have become passionate about is writing. And so in so many words, I basically said, hey, pick the pen back up.
Yeah.
Pick the pen back up.
Yeah, that's good.
And for somebody, it may be as simple as pick the tennis racket back up, or pick the paintbrush back up, or whatever it may be. But I think when you engage in work that's meaningful and replenishing, there's something is it Eric Liddell, the famous Olympian missionary guy, that says, when I run, I feel the pleasure of God.
Yeah.
So for me, when I write and when I speak, I feel the pleasure of God.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's work that replenishes me.
Yeah, that's good.
And so, yeah,
I like it.
Yeah.
I think you have to identify it, because I think some people, like you mentioned, their career, maybe what they have to do, I think all of us, there's aspects of probably all of us that our job that we enjoy, and that maybe, I'm assuming, some things that maybe fill you up. There's also aspects of anyone's job that drains you.
Sure.
It's that whole 4 quadrants and understanding what's urgent, what's important, what's not urgent, but important. And so I think even within your own job and career, because you said replenishing work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that could be side stuff, but that could be even in your main
Mm-hmm.
career and job. It's identifying the things that, you know, you get to do.
Yeah.
Not
Yep.
that you have to do,
Mm-hmm.
and putting your energy into that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it. So I think there's replenishing work, but also to add to that, I think there's also just replenishing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's, you know, sometimes one of those things that I can tell that I think affects my mental health when I go a really long season, a busy long season without having a little bit of an extended break.
Yeah.
So it's summertime coming, you know, it's that, is there a family vacation? Is there a vacation where you're going to go on a trip? Is there those things are sometimes so, you know that, you know, they're just so good for the soul.
Yeah.
And so there's something about, I think, finding out what, you know, recreation could be playing golf. You know, I had a season, I haven't played golf very much for the last few years. And partly I feel like I've just been, every time I ask them, someone says, I'm like, I've just been too busy. And kind of this year, I wanted to put it as a little bit of a priority to try to get out and play some. I thought if I bought some new irons, it would help me. I haven't gone out yet with them. I've hit them once.
Yeah, Tommy tells me y'all been talking.
Yeah,
about
I'm like getting myself like, okay, back in the mode. But what I found is it's so easy to be distracted by all the things that I have to do that I don't make priority, because it's not a priority. It's going and playing golf takes hours, but I need to not always see it that way. I need to see it as, no, this is actually part of refilling me. There's something that is, I'll tell you, I will say this, golf is one of the most frustrating, but it's also can be one of the most relaxing. Like, if you're not too worried about how you're playing, being out with some friends, you know, whether you're riding around on a beautiful golf course on a beautiful day, being able to sit out, experience the sun, like it is like, it's fun. It's life-giving, even if you're terrible at it.
Yeah.
If you don't take yourself too seriously, if you can enjoy the moment, there's something about it, like everything's slowing down, even if you have to drive up to your ball and wait to hit. And you're sitting in a cart with somebody else and you're just talking and you're just, you know what I mean? There's something relational about golf. I don't like to play golf by myself. Most don't.
We should play golf.
You play golf?
I don't currently at all, but I would. It's funny because I keep telling Tommy the last 2 summers, I'm like, invite me. I would go.
Okay, so then we all just need to go, because I've been wanting to go with Tommy for a while. But I guess what I'm saying is, what does it look like in our schedule to something that we say is not a priority, because it's, well, I'm not working and I'm not taking care of these things and I'm not doing that, but can we say our mental health is a priority?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we are going to make our mental health a priority, then we might actually have to make recreation or rest or something that is restorative, because I think there's a difference between rest and restoring. You know, we need rest is to kind of, you know, your body needs it to replenish, but there are certain things that can restore you.
And one of those things,
and one of those could be work.
It could be work,
writing,
but it's also what you just said with recreation. It's funny. Think about the construction of the word recreation, to recreate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Recreation is recreating your soul when it's become just stiff with obligation.
Yeah.
And you need it.
Yeah.
You need that fresh oxygen.
So I think we can downplay the importance of recreation, and I think you even preached on it one time. But wasn't it about a year ago?
Yeah.
But I don't know that we should downplay it. Yeah, it may not bring money in, and it may not fix the house projects that you have, and it may not do all of the things that you want to do to try to but it might be more important than some of those things. It might actually be improving your mental health. It's a form of mental fitness. So get out and play golf or whatever it is, pickleball, go do something that restores you. Go on vacation if you can. Go on, do something in recreation that can fill you. And so that's a huge part. And you know what it is, again, there's so many parallels to the physical. Because in physical fitness, one of the things that's important to do is when you go work out afterwards, you need to replenish what you just expended.
Yep.
That's why there's post-workout, there's protein shakes. There's people that there's eating certain things right afterwards. There's there's electrolytes. There's putting stuff back in that you expended.
Yeah, it's funny.
And so I think it's the same thing with our soul.
Yeah, it's funny. I told you I'm leaving for Kentucky on Thursday, going to the Ragnar Relay Race in the mountains. And for the first time ever, I had to buy electrolytes. And so I got all these electrolytes in. I'm getting ready to put them in because I'm like, I don't even know what all I'm going to be taking out of my body.
Intravenously, aren't you? Aren't you going to have an IV hooked up while you run? It's a little...
Absolutely not. No, I have a Element. Tim Ferriss recommends it, but it's Element electrolyte drinks. I'm putting water and...
And you're going to be running like, what is it, 38, 70, 74 miles?
14 miles.
14 miles?
14 miles. Close, though. 14 miles.
But not at one point. But you guys like take turns.
Yes.
It's a relay.
Yep. So I think I have 2 legs that are 5 miles and 1 leg that's 3. Or no, 1 leg that's 4.
Okay.
Yep.
And so you're going to run like these 5-minute miles.
No. Yeah, I told you yesterday I was a little slower. To try to... In a little bit of training mode,
Here comes a brag.
No, it's not. It's not
Here
a brag.
comes a brag.
I went slow. I did a 6-mile run at Chiller yesterday before we went to the movies.
Yeah.
And I went up in my time, unfortunately, to above 11 miles.
Yeah, but you ran 6 miles. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I guess.
You ran 6 miles in a single day.
And
for some people, that's nothing. For most people, that's more than they would ever do.
You know what's crazy? It goes to show because I woke up yesterday with some stuff in my mind, and I had a good, conversation with God yesterday morning. But after my run, oh my gosh, it's just so crazy how, and this may be another conversation for another podcast, although it would bore some people to tears. But I even feel a different emotional, mental boost from lifting weights than I do from running. There's a different, and I don't explain it, but when I run, I feel a clarity afterwards.
Yeah.
It's like a mental, and what's crazy is I will feel mental blocks of messages I'm preparing or things I'm writing, and the answer will come while I'm writing or while I'm running. It's really interesting. Whereas lifting is almost this therapeutic release outlet. I don't even know how to explain it, but and I think you're talking about the different things that you do afterwards, like electrolytes.
You know why I think that is, though, real quick?
Why?
I think because I used to run a bit more than I do now, and I do other forms of cardio instead of running. But even one of the things I really enjoyed doing when I did it was running outside. It's totally different than running on a treadmill.
100%.
Not just the physical environment of what you're doing, but for your mind. I think one of the differences when you go out and you run, you're doing something that is so natural to you. Walking and running is so natural that it's pretty much, it's not, but it's nearly unconscious. You can run without thinking about it.
Yeah.
You don't lift without, when you're lifting, you're thinking about, okay, grab those weights. I'm going to do this exercise. You're under there. You're doing them. So I think your mind is actually absorbed more in working out. Even if you're listening to music and doing other things, you're still like you're still thinking about your workout.
Yeah.
When you go running, you don't think about running.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it does. I mean, one of the things I would enjoy is I feel like there is a form of solitude that you experience in running.
Yes.
Even if you have music or if you have something in your ears, your mind just like wanders and it thinks, and it almost feels like it's creating space for your mind to think.
It really does.
Because you don't talk. It's hard to talk while you run. You don't do it. You don't talk, but you are talking on the inside. And so you're having, you know what I mean? You're thinking through everything, and I just don't think you can do that as well when you work out with weights. Yeah.
Now, it's interesting. I probably should do less of this, but I told you, whereas you always listen to podcasts while you work out, I always have music. So I have music going. One time a couple years ago, I tried because John Mark Comer, he does these long runs, but all in silence.
Yeah.
I did that once.
I think the music's almost distracting so that I can have my silence with my mind. I feel like if I don't have any of it, it's almost like...
Yeah.
But there is a solitude. There's something beautiful about
there really
that.
is.
And so I imagine it does really help your mind, your emotions.
It does. And
everything.
there's a euphoria. It's so interesting. Yesterday.
Runner's high.
Yeah, it is. It's a runner's high. Like, and I still don't consider myself a runner, even though, I mean, I know 6 miles isn't small, but I really just a few years ago started running, and mainly I just found the mental health boost so encouraging. Where was I going? Apparently it's not helped my mental health much because I completely lost my train of thought. But
Yeah.
Oh, but there's a euphoria. Oh, it's funny. What I was gonna say is I usually when I do run, it's usually earlier in the day. Like I'll run more on the weekends. But since this race is this weekend, I went straight from work to Schiller Park, changed, began running, and I mean, literally after like 1 minute, I'm like, oh, I don't think I can do this. Like I'm feeling, I feel it. I don't feel the energy. I don't feel my muscles are achy, but it's so funny. Within like 8 minutes, I'm like, I could go for.
You're in the zone.
I could go forever
For like a marathon.
I mean, I don't know. I'd have to train for that.
Why don't you sign up for a marathon?
I don't know. I like running. I don't like running that much.
Oh.
I don't want to run that long.
Yeah.
And even though I do mainly do it for mental health, I like lifting weights. And yeah.
So we talked a lot about physical.
Okay.
Is there anything else that we'd add? I mean, we talked about recreation. We talked about making space to do things that replenish you for your mental fitness.
I mean, I feel like we've talked about this ad nauseum, but I just think another thing that when you are feeling low that you tend to do just by instinct is you draw away from community instead of towards it.
Yeah.
And actually, it's funny. I was thinking about this morning because I was thinking about the message. And a lot of times if you're in a negative space, the thought that came to my mind this morning is if you're in a negative space, unfortunately, you probably either are going to isolate away from people or you're going to gravitate towards negative people.
Which is worse.
And so I just think it's so important the people you surround yourself with and to make sure that, when you're in your lowest states, you're not isolating.
Yeah.
And that you're moving towards healthy community. I think another thing too, this is going to sound very cliche, but this made to me just top the list of all this is practicing gratitude. And that gratitude really is the most important ingredient to make your heart healthy. I just think, modern psychology is caught up to it. You have a gratitude journal on every corner, and every scientist and psychologist is talking about how gratitude ups your levels of happiness. What was it the one person talked about? It's a lubricant to the brain of creativity. Like there's just it's the wonder drug. Gratitude really is. And then you look at all the verses in Scripture that talk about worry, but it always has that parenthetical note of with thanksgiving. So this morning, I was off-site working because I was message prepping, and so I did a prayer walk this morning around my apartment, and it's so crazy. I was talking to God about some of the things frustrating on my heart, and the verses just come to my mind. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, with thanksgiving, make your requests known. The psalmist said, enter his courts with praise and his gates, and so I was like, okay. And so I just was like, all right. And so I just took a few minutes and just said, God, I can't believe that I get to do this in my life. I can't believe blah, blah, blah. I can't believe. And it's sounds so cliche, but within minutes, my whole framework was different.
Amazing.
And actually it's kind of funny. For a moment, I went after my quote unquote with Thanksgiving. I went to then bring my quote unquote requests of God. Here's what I'm asking you to do. And it took me a minute to remember. I'd actually forgotten what it was because I really did become overwhelmed with. And so I found myself actually praying more, God, would you help me to stay in this space?
Yeah.
Would you help me to stay in this grateful space? Would you help me to stay in this place where because when you're grateful, man, it just shifts everything about your perspective.
Yeah.
It helps you not be stupid.
Hey.
It helps you not take things for granted.
Yeah.
It really does affect every arena of your life when you're grateful.
Yeah.
And it affects your health. And it definitely, I think, is one of the most important ingredients for a healthy mental space.
So good. I also, just to tag on to that, I think it kind of fits, but one last thing I was thinking about that we didn't mention was I think the importance of having spiritual connection. We've talked a lot about the physical connection to our mental health, physical fitness. We don't think a lot about spiritual fitness.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think that you mentioned community, but I just want to, and this is more me, and I think a lot of people feel this way, but that even our Sunday gatherings, just coming into an environment that is positive, that is hopeful, that is filling. One of my favorite times. I love our experiences, but honestly, I love what happens after them. That we have this massive space where people just come and hang out, and I get to see people. And it's funny, just even, I remember because during the pandemic, when we weren't meeting in person, I think I took for granted even the quick little check-ins where I would see the same people every week and just get a high five and how are you doing, a little side hug, and just like, you know, just a brief 1 minute, 2 minute conversation with somebody, like, really makes you feel a part of something. It makes you feel interconnected to something. And so I think that the community aspect and the gathering, like, I mean, why you're sleeping at home, you're getting up lazily on Sunday, you're eating something that's maybe not great for you, you know, you're cleaning the house. Okay, all the stuff that you might want to do that sounds like I just want to do nothing. Well, doing nothing doesn't necessarily refill you.
No.
Doing something good can actually refill you. Like doing nothing, I don't think improves your mental health.
Yeah. Yep.
I think doing something positive improves your mental health.
Yep.
And I mean, come to an environment where, I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about mental health. We're talking about how, you know, like this past week, you know, your self-worth, your esteem is not on what you do. It's not how much money you make. It's not, but just to hear that, just to be reminded that it's like, no, you're valuable because God made you. You're valuable because he loves you. You're valuable to this community. You're valuable to your family. You're, you know, like, I just think, I don't know what those affirmations do.
Yeah.
But I think that they do something for our mental health, our soul, our emotional well-being. Yeah. That it just should not be discounted.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just think, it's just church. I just go to church. Well, if that's what you feel, then I'd check where you're going to church, because I never feel that way about coming to our church.
Yeah.
And B, I'd say pick a different attitude or perspective of what you want to get out of that moment.
Yeah.
If you're putting in time thinking somehow then I'll be good with God, or somehow I'm just, you know, then you aren't going to get anything out of it. But if you come to connect, come to serve, come to be a part of something, come to experience God, to be inspired, to be encouraged, even if it's one line that was said, an entire message, you write down that goes, that was good. I needed to hear that.
Yeah.
So I don't want to overlook the spiritual side of improving your mental health.
No, it's
be
good.
proactive in your mental fitness.
No, it's really good. You know, we've kind of gone out of our way to be so practical that it'd be easy to forget that. I know from my faith framework and yours too, we are at our core essentially spiritual beings, and that is the biggest determinant of every arena of our health. And you know, we talked, like I think it was last week, we talked about connection and how the opposite, or no, it was a couple weeks ago, the opposite of loneliness is connection. And the IV for spiritual health and mental fitness in our lives is that connection with God, to really not just go through emotions, but how do you richly connect with God in a way that you know, Jesus used the analogy in an agricultural thing of abiding in him to stay full and whole. Today, I think we would just say, are you keeping the phone plugged in? Are you keeping your soul plugged into the source of life of God and letting all his life come into you?
And we're trying to, this is what I talked about last week, we're trying to produce so that we have worth and value. And Jesus' perspective was, if you actually just connect to me, you will produce.
That's good.
And so we're trying to chase after the very thing. He's like, you'll good. Experience it, but you experience it if you put the right thing first, if you stay connected. And
That's
so
good.
All of these things I think are just, I mean, could we talk about anything more practical than what we've talked about? I mean, this is so incredibly practical from, I'm working on it. We're about wrapping up, I imagine. So I got drinking water to, I mean, maybe just, what were all of them? Drinking water, and maybe reducing your sugar, your alcohol intake, your caffeine.
So we talked about exercise. We talked about what you're cutting out, and part of that would be food. Sugar, alcohol, curbing your caffeine, making sure you're drinking a gallon of water, your physical exercise. We talked about gratitude. We talked about replenishing work. We talked about rest, recreation.
Golf. Go play golf. I need my wife to hear this.
I'll throw myself under the bus with one thing that's kind of connected with the first when we talk about taking time to measure. One of the things after my last soul check-in that I just started writing some notes, jotting down some observations. One observation I have about myself is I don't think I'm always the best at processing. And what I mean by that is I think a lot and I analyze a lot, but I actually wrote down, I never planned on saying this publicly, but I wrote down, I think sometimes I'm better at ruminating than processing.
Yeah. Sure.
There's a difference between processing in a healthy way that moves you forward and ruminating over something in a way that keeps you stuck.
I love that. That's so good.
And so I'm in a season where I'm processing. What are the areas where I can process better? And I can process in ways that acknowledge, oh, this is what I'm feeling, but I don't get stuck in it.
And processing hopefully will lead to action.
Yes.
See, I think that's the biggest difference in my mind. Ruminating, you just keep playing it back over and over. But when you process something, it should move you to, I need to change something. I need to do something about this. I need to talk to somebody about this. You know, and it does help. That's a really good point. Don't just ruminate on stuff, but process it. And I think too, you know, as you're doing with your soul check-in, I think significant things don't process by yourself. I think we can always process things about ourselves that we either don't like, things that aren't healthy, things that come to our understanding. You know, we can do that, but you really should process significant things with people, whether it's a counselor, whether it's a friend, a soul check-in person, a family member, you know, pastor, whatever it is. But
it's good.
This is good stuff.
Yeah.
Very practical. Today was just super practical. This is mental fitness. Go work out your mind and emotions.
And sometimes it can be overwhelming. So here's, we don't usually have challenges at the end of these, but here's a challenge. Pick one of these. Just pick one.
I did drink water. I'm trying to finish it. We're wrapping up, and I've got a little bit left. Look at you.
I'm done. If you're listening, you're watching, pick one of these and apply it over the next week. And then let us know. Do an experiment.
Maybe I'll cut caffeine. I don't drink.
Oh, you don't even need caffeine.
No,
You're one of those.
drink it.
You're one of those anomalies that wakes up with energy.
You know what's the hardest one for me?
What's that?
Out of all of those, rest.
Oh, I know.
I am bad at it. It's not uncommon for me to go on 5 hours of sleep a night. I'm so bad at it. Because I like to get up early, but then I get tired late, but then I either push through or I'll fall asleep. I get broken sleep, and I wake back up. Like, I don't go to bed. I fall asleep.
Yeah.
And then I wake up, and then whatever, and then I'm up till 12, 12:30, whatever, and my alarm's going to go off at 5:30. And so I am so bad at getting rest. I keep telling myself that's why I'm not bulking up.
Are you trying to bulk?
No. But I keep telling myself that's what it is, because people say that you need lots of rest to put on muscle. And I keep going, well, that's why I can't do it. It's probably not why. But
how's your soul day?
It's been okay. It's not been great. I feel like I found myself working, not in like work, but other work areas. It's because we've been so slammed in getting ready for all the things we have. We have family coming into town this week, staying with us for a week. We have graduation party. We've got all this stuff. So I've been so busy. I've been thinking about it though. There's certain aspects of things that I do that actually does replenish me. Yeah. One of the things I love to do, I've said this before, is believe it or not, I have a riding mower, sitting on the mower.
Yeah, you
told
me that.
Putting books, podcasts, sermons in my mind. It's the whole thing, almost like running. But I'm not running. But I don't have to think about it.
Right.
You don't have to think about it really when you're mowing. And so it's more like very therapeutic.
It's a great time of the year weather-wise.
Oh yeah, I've been mulching. I mean, 105 bags of mulch to do my house. 105.
Oh, wow.
I had those bags delivered.
And that replenishes you?
No.
Oh, okay.
Hated that. But I got it done.
Okay. I was going to say, man.
No, that does not replenish me, but I have to get it done. So, I'm trying to.
Well, tomorrow watching the Clippers game, that's going to be replenishing.
It is. And last gulp.
There you go. A collective.
I did it.
A collective.
I did 12 ounces of water since we came out here and we recorded this. So that's 1/5 of my
cheers
gallon.
to our mental health.
1/5 of a gallon.
Go drink you some water.
There you go.
Hey, have a great week. Hopefully this episode inspires you, helped you, or at least just got you thinking. Until next time, let us know if you take the challenge, the experiment to up your mental fitness. Tell us what's working for you, something that we didn't mention even. Let us know. What do you do to keep yourself mentally fit? And until next time, email us, podcast@thex.church. That's podcast@thex.church. Rate and review and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you next week.